And then it happened, Book 8, Chapter 11, Hamburger Helper. By the middle of July, Gordon had had enough of trying to make money by babysitting babies, dogs, and cats. They were too much trouble, he said. Cats ran away, dogs bit, and babies needed their diapers changed. He had discovered an easier way to make money by cutting grass. It was a perfect job. In fact, for the last 2 weeks, Gordon had been cutting the lawn of an old couple who were no longer able to push a mower and were happy to pay Gordon to do the job for them. They paid Gordon $40 to do it each week, and it took him 4 hours. Compared to changing diapers and walking dogs, it was an easy job. Because Gordon had this great paying job, he was feeling generous and offered to treat Paul and me to ice cream at the best ice cream parlor in town before heading off to his grass cutting job one day. "This is the best job ever," exclaimed Gordon as we stood in line at the ice cream counter. "It pays well and it only takes about 4 hours a week. Cutting grass sure is easier than babysitting or walking people's dogs." The man in the line ahead of us turned around and studied Gordon. "Pardon me," he said, "but did I hear you say that you cut lawns?" Thinking the man must want to hire him to cut the grass, Gordon replied, "Yes, sir, I sure do. Are you interested?" "Maybe," said the man. "I'd have to see your work first, though. Where did you say you were working?" "Well, I'm cutting the lawn at 14 Mill Cove," said Gordon. "I'm sure they'll give me a good reference." "Thanks," said the man, and he hurried out of the ice cream parlor without even buying any ice cream. "Looks like you've got another customer lined up," remarked Paul with envy. "I wish I could make $10 an hour cutting grass." Gordon bought us some ice cream, and we sat down to enjoy it before walking Gordon over to Mill Cove to begin his great job. When we arrived at the elderly couple's house, we were surprised to see a truck with a trailer attached to it parked in front of the house. There was a sign on the truck that said, "EconoCut. We cut the competition." We could hear the sound of a lawnmower in the distance. "Hey," said Gordon, "the front lawn's already been cut, and it sounds like someone's cutting the back lawn too. This is my job. What's a professional lawn service doing here?" "I don't know, Gordon, but it looks like they've hired someone else to do the job," I said. Then, from around the corner of the house came a big riding lawnmower driven by a man. "That's the guy from the ice cream store," I exclaimed. "He stole my job," yelled Gordon. Seeing us, the man turned off the mower, tipped his hat back and said, "Howdy, boys. Nice day for some yard work, eh?" "You stole my job," accused Gordon. "Well, now, I wouldn't put it that way," said the man, slick as oil. "How would you put it then?" demanded Gordon. "Well, now, I'd say I outbid you. You see, it takes you 4 hours to cut this lawn with a push mower, and I can do it in less than half the time and for less than half the price." "We'll see about that," said Gordon, heading up the front walk and ringing the doorbell. "Here comes trouble," squawked a large white parrot sitting in a cage on the front porch. "Hi, Captain Riddle," said Gordon to the bird, reaching into his pocket and bringing out the crackers he had brought for him. Captain Riddle was the elderly couple's pet, and they doted upon him, feeding him special treats and calling him their grand parrot, since he had no grandchildren to spoil. The door was opened by Mr. Adams, an elderly man who had hired Gordon to cut his lawn. He looked a little uncomfortable to see Gordon standing there. "Oh, hello, young man," he said, obviously embarrassed. "You're early today." "I want to get a head start on your lawn, but I see he beat me to it," said Gordon, gesturing to the man on the riding mower. "Well, it's like this," said the old man slowly. "This fellow says he can cut our lawn for half of what we were paying you, and, well, money's a bit tight, so he thought we'd give him a try. You'd understand, I'm sure." "I guess I do," mumbled Gordon. "Does this mean I'm fired?" "Oh, I wouldn't put it like that," said Mr. Adams. "Let's just say your services are no longer required." Gordon turned away and came slowly down the driveway to where Paul and I waited for him on the curb. What did he say? I asked. He said this guy can do it for half the price and the money's tight, so what else could he do? I don't blame him. I blame the guy on the lawnmower. He stole my job. Yeah, what a creep, said Paulo. You're not going to let him get away with it, are you? What can I... But before he had even finished his own question, Gordon already had a plan. Guys, I've got a great idea. Will you help me pay back this job thief? Eager to see justice done, and hopefully to get more free ice cream, Paul and I agreed to help. Gordon's plan was simple, but it was pure genius. Gordon had always cut the Adams lawn on Tuesdays, so he figured that the man from EconoCut would be back next Tuesday to cut their lawn again. We had to wait a whole week to put Gordon's plan into action, but it was worth the wait. The following Monday, Gordon went to the grocery store and bought a pound of hamburger meat, which he hid in the back of the fridge so his mother wouldn't find it and cook it for dinner. Next, he undid the seam of his pillow and placed several handfuls of feathers into a bag. Then he found an old bird cage that was stored in his garage. He was all set. The next day, Gordon met us around the corner from the Adams house. We waited for about half an hour, and finally, just before lunchtime, we saw the truck with the EconoCut sign pull up to the house. Within a few moments, we could hear the drone of the riding lawnmower as the man quickly rode up and down the front lawn, cutting wide strips of grass with each path. Eventually, he shut the mower off, wiped the back of his hands across his sweaty brow, and walked over to his truck for a cold drink and a short lunch break. Settling back into the driver's seat, he leaned back and closed his eyes to rest and cool off before finishing the job. "Okay," said Gordon, "now's our chance." Ducking low, Paul and I dashed across the lawn to the front porch and gently lifted Captain Riddle out of his birdcage and placed him in the one Gordon had brought from home. We made sure we left the door to Captain Riddle's cage open. Fortunately, we made it back to the hedge around the corner just as the parrot began to talk. "Here comes trouble!" Meanwhile, Gordon darted up to the riding mower and using a small plastic shovel, he carefully pushed the ground beef and several handfuls of feathers underneath the mower, being careful to keep his fingers well away from the sharp blade. Then he rejoined us behind the hedge to watch the excitement. "This should be good," he chuckled, rubbing his hands together in anticipation. A few minutes later, his break over, the man climbed out of his truck to finish cutting the grass. He sat down on the mower and turned the key. The engine sputtered and came to life. And then it happened. There was a loud thud, followed by several more thuds and bangs, and then something messy shot out from underneath the mower, followed by a cloud of white feathers. Startled, the man turned off the engine and climbed down to examine the debris that had flown out from his mower. He bent down and stared, and then slowly turned his head and looked toward the front porch of the house, to where Captain Riddle's birdcage hung, empty. His head swiveled back to the mess of ground beef and feathers, and then back to the birdcage again. His eyes popped open wide as the realization of what must have happened crept over him. He removed his cap and wiped his brow several times, and then slowly made his way to the front porch to stare into the birdcage, no doubt hoping to find the beloved parrot hiding in the corner of the cage or behind his water dish. Finding the door open and no trace of the parrot in the cage, he reluctantly rang the doorbell and waited for one of the elderly Adams to open it. A moment later, Mrs. Adams answered the bell. "Yes? Are you finished already?" she asked. "No, not quite, ma'am," began the man. "You see, well, I'm afraid there's been a little accident." "Oh, I hope you're not hurt," cried the old woman. "No, ma'am, it's not me. It's your bird." Before he could finish the sentence, the old woman scurried out of the house in her slippers and went straight to the cage. "Captain Riddle!" she exclaimed. "What's happened to my poor parrot?" "Well, ma'am, it's like this. Gordon, Paul, and I watched as the man proceeded to explain about poor Captain Riddle. He gestured to the cage and then to his lawnmower, and then to a pile of feathers and ground beef. The poor old woman's eyes widened as the tale went on, and her face grew whiter by the second. "My poor Captain Riddle!" she cried. "You've killed Captain Riddle!" "It was an accident, ma'am. I had no idea the bird was underneath the blades when I started up the moor." I thought the old woman was going to faint, but instead she started shouting, "You're fired! Take that darn lawnmower and get off of my property this instant!" The man backed away from the front porch, apologizing with each step he took. Gordon, Paul, and I sat hidden behind the hedge, holding our sides as we shook with laughter and silently high-fived each other. "Now," said Gordon when the man from McConnell Cut had driven away, "all we have to do is wait a few minutes and then knock on the old lady's door and tell her that we have found her parrot flying around the neighbourhood. She'll be so happy to see Captain Riddle that she'll probably give me my job back. Who knows? Maybe I'll even get a raise." End of book.